Hi, this is Mazarine Trays of Element Fundraising, Get the Job, Your Fundraising Career Empowerment Guide, and the Fundraising Career Conference. So today I want to talk with you about what not to do in your fundraising job interview. Here are 3 tips of things not to do in your fundraising job interview. I coach a lot of people in how to get their fundraising jobs, and these are the mistakes I see people make over and over again. One of the mistakes is not knowing when to shut up. Quite honestly, we all get nervous. I myself can be very verbose when I am nervous. And that is the thing that's going to sink you so fast in this interview that you really just want to be careful that you don't sink yourself. So, the way to not speak too much in the interview and just kind of like overshare or answer a question too deeply is to center yourself before you go in. As I said in previous videos, take a deep breath, but then also practice with a friend. So if they say to you, tell us one about your greatest successes in a previous job, you need to say, as we said in previous videos, what, how, and wow, and then shut up. And then if they ask you for further details, you can give it to them, but you shouldn't go on and on and on. And I coached a person a year ago now who was just, why am I not getting jobs? It just doesn't make any sense. And then we talked and I pretended to interview her and I quickly saw her problem, and it was this. So if you don't have something that they want, let's say you don't have a degree or you don't have the exact right database experience, that happens to a lot of us. And there's a reason they called you in for the interview. So don't be worried. They called you in because they saw that you had potential. And so if you're worried about those particular questions, you might just want to come up with a succinct answer about why you're still the right candidate for this job, even if you don't have every single thing that they want. So a way to keep yourself from just babbling on is to adopt a relaxed posture in the interview. Don't cross your arms. Put your arms down near your lap. Don't fold them in your lap, but put them on your thighs and just gaze at them if you can, if it's not a phone interview, and say, hey, I'd love to learn more about some of the challenges that you're working on right now. What are some of the things that are keeping you up at night? And so when you start to have a two-way conversation, you allow them to talk. And when you allow them to talk, you're really killing the interview. Like, you're doing a wonderful job, because what they're doing is hearing that you can listen, and a good listener can be a good fundraiser. So you want to hear what their main problems are. And then you can say, gosh, I worked on something similar to that, and this is what we did. Have you tried this? And see what they say. So that's one thing to avoid in your fundraising job interview. Another thing to avoid in your fundraising job interview, which I see over and over again, is when people are asking you a question and you just get really defensive. Recently, I read some research on, for example, if you've been fired from a job, how you should respond, how you should not respond in the interview. So, for example, if you're a good fundraiser, you're going to get fired because you have to be able to say no. And a lot of times in fundraising, people have unrealistic expectations, and saying no is part of the job. So sometimes people don't want to hear no and they fire you. And you don't want to say that in the interview, because as I found, when you talk about what a terrible boss you had before, people are going to be identifying with the boss, not you, because if you make yourself sound like a victim, they don't want to identify with a victim. They want to identify, sad as it is, with somebody who is more powerful than a victim. So if you're making yourself out to be a victim, you're sinking yourself in the interview. So instead, if they say, why did you leave your previous job? You can say, they did not offer enough room for advancement. That's why I'm really excited to come here. You can say something like, I had the best coworkers I ever could have. It just wasn't the right fit. I really prefer this or that kind of job. And so that way you can really start to see sort of like matching your values with what they're doing now, and reframe it as, this is why I'm so good at this job. This is why I'd love to have this job. So having that defensiveness come down into being a reframe of, that wasn't the right fit, but I think this is. And then if you want to go even in more depth, you can ask them, where do you see this position going in the next 5 years? What would you like to see this person do in this position? And so then you turn it back to them. You allow them to think, what kind of person would be successful in this kind of role? That way you can say at the end of the presentation or the end of the interview, is there anything that you wanted to hear that you didn't hear? from me to make you think that would be a good candidate for this job? And allow them to think, oh, if there wasn't, well, then why are we hesitating? If there was, what would it be? So that's a question you can ask. And a lot of people don't ask the right questions in their fundraising job interview. So, three things. The last thing is when you're in this interview, you need to treat it as a two-way interview and make sure that you have a chance to ask your questions. So you also want to look at their 990. And if there's difficult financial issues, you want to gently probe on those and say, hey, did you have a good year with the gala this year? Or are you kind of trying to come back to the 2016 levels? Something like that. Or, I saw that Grant's income has fallen recently. How are you hoping to shore up other levels of income to retrieve that? So those are some things to think about, just in terms of showing that you care about their problems, that you're already thinking about how to solve them, and you're excited to get going on this job. So those are three things to do and not do in your fundraising job interviews. Stay tuned for the next video.